Once upon a time, two universes stood apart like myth and memory, one forged in shadows, the other in sparks. One a cathedral of gods and grief, the other a playground of chaos and charm. They clashed not with fists but with feeling, competing visions of what a hero could be, what a story could become. Marvel was color and rhythm and imperfect hope. It danced through trauma without drowning in it. It gave us heroes who made mistakes, who laughed through the pain, who changed not because they had to, but because they chose to. It wasn't afraid of joy. It wasn't afraid of light. But lately, that light has faded, replaced with something borrowed, something heavy. The edges are sharper now, the silence louder. It's not evolution we're witnessing. It's mimicry masquerading as maturity, and the deeper you look, the more familiar it starts to feel. There's a strange weight to watching Marvel become the very thing it once rebelled against. The brooding slow motion, the grayscale morality, the endless monologues about power and pain. It's no longer just storytelling. It's a performance of someone else's myth, and the mask doesn't fit. We are watching a giant imitate its reflection, not to honor it, but to survive, to stay relevant, to reclaim something it believes was lost. But you cannot lead by copying the footprints of another. You cannot find your voice by echoing someone else's thunder. In this video, we explore how Marvel abandoned its soul to mirror DC's shadows. We trace the scenes, the storylines, the aesthetics that prove this isn't coincidence. It's a choice. And we ask whether there's still time to pull the mask off and become something original again. There was a time when Marvel and DC stood on opposite shores, each crafting their own mythologies in the shadows of towering icons. But now the waters are murky, and the reflections between them are harder to ignore. Post-Endgame, something shifted, a strange gravitational pull, as Marvel began to echo ideas that felt too familiar. From multiverses to moral ambiguity, caped crusaders to cosmic destinies. The line between inspiration and imitation has grown razor thin. You can feel it in the silence between trailers, in the weight of costumes that look like borrowed threads. You watch Marvel's new stories unfold, and suddenly you see DC's fingerprints everywhere. A brooding anti-hero with a dark past, a reluctant savior haunted by legacy, a color palette drained of its joy, traded for grayscale grit and shadowed skylines. They're chasing something they used to mock, and in doing so, they've started to lose what made them unique. Look at the timelines unraveling, the timelines converging, the gods falling from grace. These are not isolated echoes. This is a pattern, a deliberate rewriting of the Marvel identity to match a formula that once seemed foreign. You wonder when the spark dimmed, when innovation gave way to emulation. When did the House of Ideas start leasing someone else's blueprint? There's a strange fascination in watching giants mimic each other, like legends trying on each other's capes. Marvel had always danced to its own rhythm, light-hearted but grounded, chaotic but coherent. Now it feels like a studio, unsure of its reflection, tilting toward the tone DC carved from stone. And the imitation isn't subtle anymore. So we ask, not with judgment but with curiosity, how did we get here? How did the universe that once gave us Iron Man's wit and Spider-Man's soul start sounding like echoes of the Batcave? And more importantly, why does it feel like Marvel isn't even trying to hide it anymore? They told us originality mattered, that each universe had a language, a rhythm, a reason to exist. But now those promises feel like smoke, like posters taped over the same old blueprint. Watching Marvel copy DC isn't just lazy, it's insulting. It's a betrayal of what they swore they'd never become. Batman v Superman walked, so Civil War could soar. But now that same rivalry is being recycled into every corner of the Marvel machine. Suddenly every conflict must be ideological, every battle a debate. They saw DC's darkness and decided to wear it like armor, hoping we wouldn't notice the weight didn't fit. There's a sorrow in watching icons dim. A sadness that settles in when you realize the characters you loved are being rewritten into strangers. It's not just that Marvel is copying DC, it's that they've forgotten themselves in the process. And the loss feels personal. Tony Stark was never Bruce Wayne. His charm wasn't born of pain, but purpose. Now every new Marvel character enters with trauma first, personality second, as if brokenness is the only path to depth. That's not growth. That's mimicry. DC built its world on gods and guilt. Marvel built theirs on people and possibility. But now the gods have taken over both, and the humans are fading. You feel it in the pacing, in the monologues, in the cinematic silence, where there once was spark. These heroes now wear grief like a uniform. And for what? To match a tone that doesn't belong to them. To win the same awards. To prove they can be brooding too. In chasing DC's aesthetic, Marvel has lost its own emotional vocabulary. Their stories used to heal, now they just haunt. We didn't ask for Marvel to be perfect, just for it to be itself. But somewhere along the way, the soul of the MCU was bartered for prestige, imitation, and empty spectacle. And in that trade, we lost something beautiful. It's wild how full circle we've come. There was a time when DC was mocked for its brooding atmosphere, for its boldness, its tragedy, its refusal to blink in the face of darkness. Now those very same shadows are the ink Marvel writes with, and weirdly, there's something awe-inspiring about that shift. You can feel DC's DNA in every slow-motion Marvel sequence now, in every operatic score that echoes through empty battlefields, in every character introduction that pauses like it's waiting for a thunderclap. It's not subtle anymore. It's a full-on tribute, a cinematic confession. Even Kong's arc feels like a remix of Darkseid's cold omnipotence. The TVA echoes the Watchman's bureaucracy and doom. Moon Knight's internal war mirrors Batman's duality down to the moonlight. They say it's coincidence, but it's poetry with familiar stanzas. It makes you wonder if these universes are no longer competing, but converging. If what we're witnessing is the fusion of tone, of archetype, of myth, a shared cinematic language built on mutual admiration and mutual fear of fading. And as frustrating as it is, it's also incredible to see the echoes of one universe ripple into the next. To witness storytelling evolve through reflection, even if that reflection costs a piece of identity along the way. But maybe, just maybe, this is a chance for reinvention. Maybe this isn't the end of Marvel's voice, but a necessary moment of silence before it speaks again. A pause in the song before the melody returns stronger than before. We've seen Marvel reinvent before. We've watched it rise from formula and become legend. And even now, amidst the mimicry and confusion, there are glimmers of its old heartbeat. In Ms. Marvel's joy, in Loki's chaos, in Daredevil's return. What Marvel needs now isn't a darker tone or a DC echo. It needs to remember its humanity, its humor, its heart. Because what made it magical was never the spectacle, it was the soul. The feeling that behind every punch was a purpose. If they can let go of the obsession with reflection, if they can stop chasing DC's shadows and instead light their own path again, then maybe we get to witness another golden age. One that blends maturity with meaning. One that feels earned. And if there's one thing Marvel has taught us, it's that comebacks are always possible. Even when the odds are stacked and the world has stopped believing, there's always a second act, if they're brave enough to write it. And yet, maybe this is how legacies die. Not with explosions, but with imitation, with slow erosion, with the quiet betrayal of becoming what you once stood against. Because what we're watching isn't just a tonal shift, it's an identity collapse. Marvel was always about becoming something better, something bolder, something more human. But now it's becoming someone else. Someone it never needed to be. And that transformation is not empowering. It's hollow. We didn't fall in love with Marvel because it was cinematic. We fell in love because it made us feel seen, because it was colorful and chaotic and sincere, because it reminded us that heroes could laugh and bleed and fail. Now it just reminds us of DC. And that's not a compliment. That's a eulogy. There's nothing wrong with respecting your rival. But when you start to speak their language and forget your own, that's when the story ends. That's when the myth loses its meaning. That's when heroes become echoes instead of icons. And so we close this chapter, not with anger, but with grief. Because Marvel didn't just copy DC. It forgot who it was. And the tragedy isn't that it changed. It's that it didn't need to.